Did you know that 50% of the babies born in the state of Tennessee are born into the Medicaid program? And did you know that prior to our cloud journey, it would take months for those parents to file, submit paperwork to make sure that their newborn was covered? As a part of today's journey with TennCare in the state of Tennessee, our cloud journey, you're going to hear about the human experience. You're going to hear about the families who no longer have to fill out that paperwork, and through the power of a mobile application, click a couple buttons, and in less than 3 minutes, have their baby covered by the Medicaid program, and the emotion drains out of that family. It's incredible. Did you know that roughly a little bit over 50% of the state's Medicaid population lives in rural communities? And prior to this cloud journey, those individuals, in order to be covered for basic care at their doctor, needed to fill out paperwork and drive and drop it off, or make a phone call and wait minutes, sometimes hours, to get somebody on the other phone line so that they could just enter their information, they just communicate their information. The stories that you're going to hear today on our cloud journey is that that's no longer acceptable. The cloud, the innovation that we're about to talk about, has eradicated that for over 50% of the rural population in Tennessee, and now they have many, many different ways to be able to get on the Medicaid program and make sure that their family is safe and healthy. Did you know how much money the state of Tennessee pays in medical bills on an annual basis for the Medicaid population? $12 billion. Billion. What if there was a way in which we could reduce a couple steps of a workflow? What if there was a way in which we could give the staff, the nurses, the employees, the contractors, additional tools and technologies to reduce some of that spend, to make things a little faster, a little bit better? Welcome, and I'm so excited to present with my team, my colleagues, my client. My name is Mike Connors. I'm a principal at Deloitte, and today we're going to be talking about our cloud journey. It's been over a couple of years. It's still going on. We're learning every day. We have both the privilege and the challenge to present in the middle of the AWS CEO and lunch. So we're going to do our best to make sure that this presentation is captivating and rewarding, and hopefully our goal is that you get at least one, maybe two things out of it that you can bring back to the work that you do all across the country and all across the globe. Our journey is going to take you through the business case. We're going to talk a little bit about the steps that we've taken, challenges that we've seen, and sharing lessons learned and success factors so that you can learn from us. Last but not least, no presentation this week is complete without a GenAI story, and we'll focus on our GenAI impacts and the work that we've done in GenAI already in the state of Tennessee and where we're headed. So as I start today's presentation, let's talk about the business case. There's two really interesting, important numbers that define the business case for going to the cloud. The first one is 1,853,123. Those are the number of individuals, human beings in Tennessee, roughly almost 25% of the entire state's population that's on the Medicaid program right now. And the buttons that we press, the things that we do, not just today, not this week, but this minute, are affecting and impacting the lives, their health, their outcomes. The needs of those individuals are more present today than they've ever been. On the other side of the spectrum of why we went to the cloud and what propelled us to do so was that for projects, for history, just on-prem, all the reasons, 4 to 6 months it used to take to be able to get a fully running infrastructure, a modern infrastructure, all the things that you all do every day, networking, servers, et cetera, security, in place just to be able to get to a place where we could deliver services to those individuals. And the collective said that's not acceptable anymore. And so with that, we, with TennCare, embarked on a journey for the cloud. And I could not be more excited to present. I'm going to give everybody a round of applause for Everton, who is our deputy CIO. He's going to take us through the cloud journey.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. So obviously, you've heard one of our biggest things about our mission, right? Being able to deliver services to the citizens of Tennessee. Now, obviously, that's a very big thing, and we don't take that lightly. One of the things that we do in IT is we always point back to our mission to make sure everybody understands why we're here and how these things that we're doing are so important to be able to deliver on the services that we offer to our citizens. One of the biggest things that you see here is that we've just heard one of the challenges that we have. You heard some of the things that we're trying to do. The biggest thing about that is sometimes IT is not necessarily prepared to be able to do all those in day one, right? So one of the things that we tried to do was being able to have the processes in place and be able to put things together to be able to deliver on those things. And not just now, but be able to do it in the future, try to future-proof our solutions, in addition to be able to have scalability and then be able to maintain what we're trying to put together. So that journey was an interesting task, to be able to say, okay, how are we going to deliver these servers? Are we going to be able to try to figure them, build them one by one? Do we need to go and have golden images? Do we want to be able to try to figure out how to deploy things in agile ways? So we create things like, hey, we have a Snow implementation that we're doing our service management to be able to handle all of our changes and be able to potentially later on integrate into cloud to be able to deliver payloads on demand. Or whether we're going ahead and creating our monitor solutions, whether we're using Splunk or Dynatrace and all these different tools that we see in the industries and how those all integrate to be able to deliver something really, really quickly and be able to do it securely and be able to have a repeatable process so we can continue to go. So what you're going to hear from us today is an opportunity for us to show you all the things that we've gone and done really well and some of the challenges that we've had. You guys know sometimes in IT, you're kind of building the plane as it's flying down the street, right? And our goal is trying to figure out how we can do that to make sure that we deliver on what we're trying to get ultimately done and do it in a secure fashion. So as we continue to go through, you're going to see some of the things we talked about, not only that, but all of the requirements that we have from a federal perspective. Our agency has a huge amount of things that we have to deliver, whether it's Pub 1075, MARSI compliance, SSA, all these great things that you guys hear, and all the alphabet soup that we have in security and compliance in addition to IT. We have to make all those things work and be able to deliver on the promises that we have for our citizens. So you're going to see a lot of things that we talk through about all those things and then how we go about trying to get it not only a framework and not only a process, but being able to automate those things to be able to do them quickly and faster and be able to deliver and get more cost-effective solutions. Because as you guys know, at the cost that we're trying to save gives us the ability to give more benefits to our citizens. So ultimately, we keep pointing back to our citizens, and that's the common theme that you're going to hear going through this presentation today, is all the things that we were able to accomplish by doing that. So we're going to dig a little bit more deeper and get a little bit more into the overall process and how we do technology and what some of the things that we've done as far as chopping up our VPCs and all these different security structures that we put together to be able to make sure we have a repeatable process. So I'm going to turn this over now to Prashant Injam, who is an MD for Deloitte, to be able to explain some of the things that we've done from an architectural perspective. Prashant.
Good morning. Thank you, Everton. Good morning, everybody. Thank you. TennCare application ecosystem is complex. I know Everton and Mike explained that we are supporting 1.8+ million citizens, but applications are not point-based solutions. These are enterprise solutions that support the citizens, the workers, contractors, the nursing homes, the partners, everybody else. So we have citizen-facing portals, we have worker portals, we have partner portals, mobile applications, we have enrollment modules. We actually support the third-party agencies like healthcare providers to actually claim the benefits back again. So this application ecosystem is so complex, and we cannot just build infrastructure to actually have each application its own standardized model. So what we did after the framework is designed, we actually defined a reference architecture that we can rely consistently upon. And the slide that you're seeing shows what is the reference architecture that we really designed. And in addition, before jumping into the slide on architecture components, I think it's also important to understand how complex the data transfers that happens between the TennCare agency and also with all the external entities that we actually work with. External entities include other state agencies, like Department of Health, Health and Human Services, Revenue, federal agencies like SSA, IRS. All these agencies actually exchange data with the TennCare to make sure at the real time or on a scheduled way, we are actually making sure the people who are claiming those benefits are actually adequately supported and the data that they're providing is absolutely correct. And in addition to these government entities, we also integrate with commercial agencies like healthcare providers and the credit score bureaus to make sure the people who are claiming these benefits are really underprivileged and they are definitely entitled to get these benefits as well. And the data that we collect is PII and PHI and sometimes the FDI as well. So the infrastructure that we are building should have controls in place and should have capability to operate and maintain and manage those security controls adequately and then make sure all the benefits are actually going through properly. So coming back, keeping that as a vision and the boundary of us, when we designed this reference architecture, we made sure this is sustainable and this is maintainable for long term for multiple applications, not just for one eligibility system or not just for one portal. Everything in and out, on the left-hand side, you'd see actually a transit VPC. That's our networking protocol, a networking gateway that actually supports internet and intranet-based communications to the applications. And top section that you actually see as a VPC, that's called Managed Services VPC, where all the enterprise tools, monitoring tools, antivirus tools, security controls, or privileged access management tools, those are all built in so that all the applications can leverage them. It's not like one component is important or other components are not important. Every one of them are relevant, and they're consistently applied for all the applications as well. And at the bottom, you actually see enterprise services or shared services. Those are, all the applications have different purpose, but some of those are reusing some of these reusable components like notices engine, enterprise document management, take the schedule batch job execution component, or several other tools that actually support the enterprise components. We actually provide those as a shared services across multiple applications. Coming back to the applications themselves, we broke them down into 3 different buckets of environments. There is non-production environments, such as your development, your SIT integration testing, or training environments, performance testing environment, where there is no live data of a production end user's data is actually loaded. Those environments are all bucketed into non-production environments. We have staging environments where we do end user acceptance testing, pre-production, production support loads, and then lastly, we have production environment where we have production and DR handled as well. And all of them are leveraging the aspects of cloud, such as the geographical segregation for your primary site and the disaster recovery site. We have our primary site in Virginia, our disaster recovery site in Ohio. And within our primary site, we also embedded the concepts of high availability as well. So we have availability zone 1 for our primary nodes, and the secondary nodes that are actually handled in a different zone as well. All of them are managed through heavily load balanced mode as well. While saying all these aspects, I think the key aspect for us was to make sure we're not cross-pollinating these environments and enabling cross-connections between these environments as well, so we can establish those security and audit controls properly in place. Once the reference architecture is in place, subsequently now we have a framework, we have a reference architecture that we can build upon. The major aspect comes into what are all the various operations that we need to provide and support these application environments. Operations are very complex. I mean, it comes from simple operations like just the console management, infrastructure, provisioning. But in addition to that, you're also talking about now network intrusion detection and protection, host intrusion detection and protection, sometimes vulnerability management, OS hardening. I'm just ranting down a few of these things, but we actually do a lot of operational services, and they cannot be missed out. It's not like with all the levels of the data and the auditability that we have to comply with the regulators at the TennCare, we have to make sure we have controls in place that we can enable them across all the applications and all the environments as well. Being said that, we are leveraging more and more cloud-native capabilities. When we started it, we were actually just using, based on the applications architecture, we just started using EC2s, RDS instances, leveraging the very similar model of how the on-premise infrastructure was. As we started embarking more into this journey, we started leveraging more RDS services, AWS Connect solutions, Lambdas and API gateways, and a few other secure data transfer service components that actually support us to actually extend and integrate more applications as well. So in terms of scale, we started this journey in 2019 September timeframe. And the initial design and the overall strategy, the vision, the framework is defined within the first 3 to 6 months time frame. And then we identified the applications to actually build and kind of modernize them in the cloud infrastructure. And if you see the scale, there are servers like 100 plus EC2s with the respective environments, and all those things were set up in the first few months. There are times where business came back and said, hey, we need to build a new long-term social services application. And this is during the peak COVID time, 2021 March to April, June timeframes. And they needed 20 plus application environments to support the modernization of that platform. Previously, they had this application in 5 different silo-based applications, each of them handling each program area of the long-term social services. Just for the context, the long-term social services is the most vulnerable population in Tennessee. Anybody older than 60 plus or 70 plus that needs hand-holding support in nursing homes or old age homes, or the people that they cannot take care of themselves. And they are actually getting support from either nurses attending them in their own homes, or them joining in the houses of people taking care of elderly care people as well. So the solution previously was like all these nurses and these elderly people have to submit the paper applications or handle their claims in a manual way through 5 different systems. It's not centrally coordinated. It's not even it's so manual, and the knowledge is so disparate and discrete, it was not even cohesive enough to get them proper services properly. The first time I think in the US, the long-term social services system has been combined and consolidated as a Pearls application in Tennessee. And I'm very proud that we were able to provide that many number of servers in such a short span. And if you see the numbers are kind of going up and down, the reason was we have the governance that's in place that we can leverage to review how we are building, and then actually how we can optimize those as well. The graph shows only the EC2s, but the compute overall, the storage that's relevant for across environments, the RDS databases that is required, everything was growing collectively as well. So the ability of the cloud of going in scalability terms in terms of actually building larger and more faster environments, and agility aspects have been taken care of. And this slide is the best example of our initial steps, how fast and quick we can actually scale and support the businesses that need these environments in a quick way.
So I want to take a poll real quick. Raise your hand if you're from more of the IT side than anything else. Let me see your hands. Okay. And let me see your hands if you're from more of the business side. Okay. So how many people know that what the business thinks up doesn't always translate to IT? Right, yeah. So those are the challenges that we have to face, right, every single day as we're putting these IT solutions together. We're talking about this journey that sounds really, really good on paper, and we really want to do all these great things. But the main thing we have to figure out is not all the processes that we have to put in place to be able to manage this thing going forward, because you guys understand, some of the times when you build POCs, they tend to be production. Yes? No? Some of my IT guys here? Figuring that out and saying, before we even build it, this is what our desired outcome is going to be. And being able to understand what that looks like, being able to understand what the future looks like, and going back to what I said previously about future-proofing things, that is a little harder than it sounds, right? You have to actually think about what the next technology is, how you're going to be able to do the stacks, whether you're going to do modularity, whether you're going to do Kubernetes or these different things to try to figure out how you can actually scale and be able to do some of the stuff. And we'll talk to you more about how we're trying to future-proof some of the things that we're going to put together. But that process and then being able to have the governance is a huge deal for us. And one of the things that we talked about governance piece is talking about we have a thing called the TARB, which is basically our architecture review board. So anything that's a new system that's going to come up and play, anything that's going to be a new technology that's going to go against our current standard, it has to go through the board and be able to be approved before we can say, yes, we're going to go do it as an organization. Those are kind of some of the rigors that we have to put in place in order to make sure that whatever we actually come up with will actually give us the outcomes and the benchmarks that we've actually set to do in a secure and fashion way, right? And be able to be future-proof and maintainable and all those great things. So one of the things I would challenge you guys as you guys thinking about all this stuff that you're doing is where you are today, where do you want to be, and then how do you necessarily get from there to be able to make sure all that works together and still deliver on the dream and the aspirations of what the business wants to get accomplished. So those are some of the challenges that we kind of did as we kind of walked through this roadmap, and then we just continue to walk together with a great partner to be able to make sure that we can deliver on the solutions that we've promised.
Okay. So this slide kind of explains how TennCare embarked on the journey of the cloud infrastructure for all of their application landscape. We are between the phase 3 and phase 4 of this journey. We have live applications in the cloud infrastructure, 8 or 9 applications right now, and all of them are in production and actively getting leveraged by the citizens and the workers and the partners that I was talking earlier about. We build the infrastructure, we're operating them, and we want to make use of all the cloud-native capabilities such as containerization of the infrastructure, or use the more advanced processing and compute capability that actually can enhance the performance of the applications as well. And then repeat the same process again. How can we actually do serverless architecture? How can we do more integrations with the SaaS solutions? So this is a journey ongoing for us to be able to get more advanced technically to support the business users. One of the lessons learned as we were actually going through this journey, between the Deloitte team and the TennCare team, we actually don't even differentiate that way, but I think it's a collective team on the technology side and the business side we define the framework, we define the architecture, we have the solutions in place, but then the teams are actually working remotely from everywhere. And during the COVID, we were all remote, both the state employees as well as the Deloitte employees. And making sure this knowledge is actually trained and properly distributed among all the stakeholders who are participating in supporting it, and they're doing consistently, the defined framework and the defined processes helped us a lot. If we didn't have that structure, and if we didn't have the review processes of making sure it's consistently applied and followed, then we would have actually missed out. Our system administrators, our engineering team members can do whatever they can do in the cloud console, right? They can spin up the servers, they can go above subnets, and they can go whatever they want to do. But we have tools, and we have integrated capabilities that we can monitor those activities, and we were able to actually review that on a periodic basis to make sure nobody is deviating from the standard processes that we established. The simple example is we have CMDB processes integrated with our ServiceNow system. If we have to build a new application environment, we have to get the approvals, and since we have to follow MARC compliance guidelines, we have to make sure any changes done in the system are documented and approved by the state before an engineer can just go ahead and do it. So we design it, we present it to the TARP, we get the approval, and then we build it. The documentation that we created should exactly match with what we build in this infrastructure, and this is done systematically. It's not somebody going in and checking on the networking firewalls. It's not somebody looking into the EC2s. It's not looking somebody at RDS. It's done systematically. We have the heavy forwarders and the connectivity established with the ServiceNow platform and other monitoring tools that actually helps TennCare to monitor this overall progress that we're making into the system. If we haven't had this in place as a baseline process, our whole infrastructure will be chaotic. Our processes would not actually kind of enable us to reuse the same purpose again and again every time for the new application comes in. Note that these are the standards that are defined, and these are established processes that we define, but there's always going to be a nuance comes in. One of the applications says like, hey, I wanted you to use a new software, or I wanted you to actually enable data to be transferred from one component to the other component in a different way than your standardization is. That's where our exception process would actually come in to support those use cases as well. Another example, most of our standard operating systems are Red Hat Linux, and some containerized softwares and SaaS solutions are bringing in Ubuntu. If you have a little bit understanding of how operating systems work between Red Hat Linux and Ubuntu, Ubuntu is not as secure as your Red Hat Linux is. And there are still standardizations that need to be done, and how frequently we can get the security patches, and all those things need to be applied. It's not the standard for us. So we have to actually make an exception based on the application needs. And we do support that to support various application needs that are coming up in the future as well. a continuation of the previous slide. So we're on the journey, and we're actually kind of marching in that process. In 2023, where we are right now, we have established, as I said, several applications in the cloud. We're actually migrating more and more applications. TennCare also embarked about 2 years ago of their monolithic MMIS platform to be modularized by the CMS guidelines. And what it means is, for 15 to 20 years, the distribution of the benefits to the citizens was actually handled by one giant system, and that's been managed by 1 or 2 supporting vendors underlying. And now CMS is actually mandating all the states, including the Tennessee, to break it down. Don't have one giant vendor and one giant system managing all of that distribution. And TennCare is actually kind of put in RFPs and actually awarded these into multiple vendor contracts. The data warehouse platform, the fraud, waste, abuse analytics solutions, the enrollment module, encounter module, financial modules, all these things are breaking down from one system to the multiple vendor modules. So TennCare is able to establish an underlying enterprise integration services layer platform as a SaaS solution. And this cloud infrastructure is providing the networking that's needed to support the cross-application integrations as well. So the underlying foundations that we have done to define the standard processes to get the applications into the cloud is also helping us enable the integrations with the multiple SaaS vendors that are coming into the ecosystem. So we can help define how the new vendors, like other application providers, can actually follow the same standards. If there are deviations, we'll talk about it. We'll actually see how we can mitigate those needs, and then we will actually support those needs as well. And the target was by 2024, any on-premise infrastructure should go to the cloud. And multiple reasons for that purpose is because sometimes we kind of ignore the capital expenditure that need to be spent on the infrastructure in the data center. What I mean is, every 6 or 7 years, you have to buy new hardware. It's not just the server boxes that you need to buy, also underlying chassis, underlying Cisco blades, underlying storage capacity providers and the boxes, they all need to be repurchased. And if you include all of the infrastructure cost, it's heavy. I mean, just in simple numbers, if we have to actually build and actually repurchase all of things that we have done in the cloud in the on-premise, it would approximately cost about $80 million as a capital expense one time every 6 years. And we're not spending that money to actually build new hardware in our own data centers right now. So with that journey, we have several milestones during this time, and this slide kind of explains what those key milestones are. Some of the numbers here are, I think these are a little bit older numbers. We probably have about 700 plus servers right now, and we're supporting around 80 plus application environments across multiple applications. The numbers of savings in terms of the cost is basically the volume discounts that we can gain by using savings plan in AWS or using enterprise discount programs that AWS provides. We're approximately saving around $1.2 to $1.5 million every year. Our capacity is growing. Our retentions of the data, the backup storage, and everything is actually growing. So our cost is growing, but it's not as alarming as if it is an on-premise infrastructure. One of the significant aspects that we were able to do in this whole cloud journey was it takes about 6 months of planning for us to conduct a disaster recovery testing. We are obligated as part of our regulatory obligations. We have to conduct a DR test annually once for all of our live applications. So we fail over to the disaster as a test exercise. We make sure everything is able to come up within the times of RTOs and RPOs. And we were able to conduct in the last 3 years for all of our new applications that are gone to live, like almost every time they go to live, we do that testing. We also do annual testing, and it takes about 6 weeks in terms of planning, roundtable sessions, identifying the exceptions, and conducting the execution, and then actually comes back and do the DR test as well. We're able to do 10 plus tests in the last 3 years for all of our infrastructure in the cloud. We're able to fail over to our secondary site in Ohio and bring the application up and test it and bring it back down as well. Anything that?
Yeah. So one additional thing that I would go ahead and highlight. You've heard us talk about, okay, we had to strategize to figure out where we are and where we wanted to be. Then the next thing you heard me talk about was figuring out the tools to be able to help us to figure out what are we monitoring, how we're doing it, and how do we place that into the overall AWS cloud to make sure that it's standardized and no matter what application we're launching, that we're going against the same methodology, same standards, same guidelines, and all that. But the third piece of that is the people. right? We have a lot of people that are basically using a lot of on-prem technology, on-prem things. So how do we repurpose that? How do we go ahead and make sure they understand where we're going? One of the things that we've done is basically to cast a vision. I have a monthly call with all the teams to be able to talk through about where we're going, what's our enterprise strategy, what are we trying to get accomplished. And those things allow people to be able to see where we're going and be able to have the skill sets to be able to repurpose some of the things that we currently do so they can help us to be able to oversee and look at some of the things that we're going to do in the future. So that also helps your people to kind of grow and figure those things out. So those are some of the things that we had to do in order to not only get ourselves prepared to go to the cloud, but also be able to maintain while we're in the cloud, and then working hands-on with our partners like Deloitte to be able to make sure that all of our applications that we're putting in there, whether we need to refactor, whether we need to go ahead and move them there, whether we need to talk about an AI solution, which we'll talk about here in a second. These are all the things that allows us to have those conversations because we actually had a strategy about where we're going and why we're going, and then be able to put the tools and the people to be able to be successful, to be able to measure those things, and be able to get an ROI on our investment. And so as we start walking all these things through, it starts thinking about other ways of us. Now we have standards. Now we figure out, okay, what's next? Where are we going in the future? How do we go ahead and get more bang out of our buck to be able to make sure that we can do solutions and be able to do them to meet our business objectives? And one of the things that we started doing about that is AI, that everybody keeps talking about, that is basically going to do everything for us in the future, and we don't have no worries in the future, right, technologists? I understand the groans. So the big thing for us is to be able to say, okay, we want to get into that market as well, but how do we use it to make it ROI for us, to be able to make it that is safe for us? And some of the things that we've talked about and some of the solutions that we've come up with allows us to start dipping our toe into that water. And so Mike will give us an opportunity right now to talk a little bit more about what's our AI strategy and where we're going from here.
Thanks, Everton. Generative AI. All right. We're on month 7 of this long, long journey. Month 7. Where did it start? I got a text message. It said, hey, what do you know about generative AI? And I quickly Googled generative AI, and I said, a lot. We had a meeting. Honesty and transparency. We had a meeting. And just like in this conference, we talked about all the amazing things that could happen. We could do this. We could have generative summaries. It could transform the contact center. We could do that. But then the conversation quickly pivoted to, how do we make sure that this is secure? How do I make sure there's the right controls in place so that I make sure that all the various project teams and enterprise is operating in a safe and secure manner? How do I make sure and monitor kind of what's going in and out of, we'll say, the generative AI space, if you will? How can I use that information for perhaps training purposes? If I know who's typing the questions into the GPTs or to the modules, the AI solutions that are asking the questions and getting the answers back, how can I use that to redefine my training? Maybe instead of having a monthly or quarterly training, I can actually get training more in real time, and maybe I can use that for communication purposes. Then our wheels started spinning. And we said, how do I make sure that I have the proper auditing and logging in place so that I know kind of like what's going on with AI? And so this concept of our AI Cloud Foundation was born. An AI Cloud Foundation on AWS Cloud, using a lot of AWS features that provides a safe space for us to create POCs, products, all within the TennCare environment, all within the cloud environment. So we said, wow, that's kind of interesting. Let's kind of enterprise architecture, and we started kind of devising and designing some of these activities. And so we said, how are we gonna prove it out? What are we gonna do? That's when we got the business involved. And that was the #1 success factor that we've had so far, is that we have gotten the business to be educated on Gen AI, so much so that some of the business directors from the Medicaid agency, from TennCare, have been in and around conferences and presented on stages about generative AI, who are trained nurses and medical professionals. It's incredible. So please, please, please make sure you're educating and training in making your business staff and knowledge workers prepared for Gen AI. As we got into more and more discussions, we said, well, maybe we can start with policy. You've probably heard it before. Let's build a policy GPT, and it could ask it questions, et cetera. So then we got to diving into some of the details. Guess how many pages of policy is required for a brand new employee to know when doing an assessment, a medical assessment, for a potential TennCare member? 342 pages. 342 pages. That person, that new employee, is going to go learn and know the policy and be knowledgeable about it. And we said, what if we could take that policy and run it through AI? What if we could figure out a way in which to change the lens, change the dynamic on how these new employees learn about the policy, how they get educated about the policy? Not only through ChatGPT type functionality, but maybe through generative summaries that are provided through trainings. Or maybe it's peppered reminders that occur through the course of time that are not managed by a communications team, but powered by AI. And so our policy GPT journey started. So where are we at right now? Our AI Cloud Foundation is built. It is working. It has been certified, tested, approved, et cetera, and ready to go. Our policy GPT has is become knowledgeable of the 342 pages of policy. We have tested it. I'll give you another tip. We worked with all of those business clients, all the people that had worked at the agency for over 20 years, and said, we need to meet with these folks, and we want to know about what they know about policy. We developed 300 questions that they get on a daily, monthly, quarterly basis from all sorts of different folks who ask them about, what about this? How do I handle this? That kind of stuff. We used those questions as a test bed for our policy GPT so that we could compare the answer that the knowledgeable worker provided and the policy GPT provided. And the information and the knowledge that we found was fascinating. In one such instance, the policy GPT generative AI created a summary of the requested question and provided an answer. There was great debate in the room. The policy experts said, no, that's not right. And they said, yes, that is right. No, that's not right. And so through research, it found that it was actually right. And some of those individuals who had been working in the agency for 20 or 30 years were like, oh, yeah, I guess it's right. It's incredible. Other stories of our testing, our journey, and it is certainly a journey. This is not a binary activity where you kind of create something and it's ones or zeros. This is a journey around reading text, just as if you put your mind into, or you put your persona of a new employee. We had to modify the way in which the text was written so that it didn't sound too professorial or if it didn't sound too generic. There's a little bit of engineering there. We're excited to say that the Policy GPT has passed successfully our testing phase. We call it Product GA internally. And we are now ready to, quote unquote, integrate or start to think about how the Policy GPT can be used in some of the applications and base applications, the business functions, the contact centers of the world. And we're on a journey to make that live in production for real outcomes in the spring of 2024. I'm going to pass it along to my colleague Prashant, who's going to share with you the overview of the technology and much more deeper details on how we did it.
Before I start on AI again, I want to call out one more key achievements that we actually gained because of this cloud journey. So about 4 or 5 years ago when we started this journey, Everton and I were actually with the business directors, member services leads on the Medicaid agency. We're asking them, hey, we're actually going in this journey and asking, what is your biggest challenge that you want to avoid? And the answer they gave was about completely towards the mission statement, which is, I don't want a single mom who's actually have a newborn baby to be not get the benefits because of the systems being down, or we cannot actually implement a new policy change in a quicker way. And we took that very seriously. I think I'm very proud to say, I know I talked about the different numbers before. We were able to save $1.2 million. We got 6, 7 systems up in the system. But I think I'm very proud about the achievement of, we didn't have a system down, like completely down, and not being able to operate at all in the last 3.5 years. And our applications are actually up 24/7 with the option of some maintenance windows and all. But that's the key milestone that I can be really proud of and say, hey, we have actually got that challenge, and we are actually able to meet that challenge. I'll come back to the AI topic now.
Don't worry, IT guys, I knocked on wood. We won't have a problem. We'll be fine.
So as Mike said, our initial use case was actually about helping a policy GPT that can answer any questions about policies for the nurses and the nursing home staff who can actually ask. We have about 1,000+ users who actually kind of support all this long-term social services citizens who actually require the services. Out of the 1,000+ resources, about 13 nurses are savvy of all this policy information. Remaining everyone refer back on this 200 pages documents and actually look back on, is the patient age is 75, he or she has this ailment, and they are eligible for certain benefits. They'll refer back on the policy documents. It takes time for them to even understand and comprehend what the policy says because there are multiple versions of policies. The answer for them is like call those 30+ people who are savvy on these policies all the time. And these people are almost in their late 50s and 60s and about to retire. And if they leave, the knowledge goes away. And that kind of driven the businesses to understand how we can actually leverage the Gen AI capability to help the new employees who are coming in and answer those questions more contextually and more elegantly for the customers that are actually appropriate for their situations, appropriate for the cases as well. The slide kind of explains we followed the same standards what we established at the beginning for the cloud is also for the generative AI infrastructure as well. We follow the same model of enterprise architecture of having non-production, staging, and production workloads. And we actually built a training cluster and also a LLM cluster that actually can use open source tools. And this is all a closed loop platform. The term closed loop, I use it very effectively because the data that we are actually submitting, even though it's public data that's available, any questions that are asking through the AI engine are actually very particular to a patient case and its PHI information. And we should not let that data go out of the security boundary and auditability boundary. And we have infrastructure built to support not only just this use case, but actually can support any other business use cases that actually come back and say, hey, can you guys try a more case copilot use case? Like my caseworkers work through an eligibility case, and can you guys build a case copilot based on the data that actually works through in previous cases? Or help enable some of the speech translation from the contact center agents and translate that into text language. We can do that with the same platform. This is the foundations that we can actually extend to the subsequent use cases that we're going to be building upon. So if you think of last 7-8 months where Gen AI came into the popularity, there is two extremes. Like there's people who are like super optimistic, want to do everything in Gen AI, and there are people who want to do, let's be cautious about it, and let's be on a continuum, let's try when it comes. I think TennCare took a stance in the middle. It's not saying completely like, let's go gung-ho and do everything in Gen AI. And the second aspect of let's not try anything, let somebody else figure it out. I think TennCare took a stance in the middle and said, let's build this, let's make our feet wet and try out and understand what it can really do. And then put the audit controls and put the security aspects around it to make sure it certainly can generate the business value. So the first use case that we were talking a little bit more detail about, the requirement was to be able to help those 1,000+ nurses to give them more contextual answers on the policies. And these policies are about 200 PDFs. Each of them on average has about 100 to 200 pages in each. And not every policy gets updated on a regular basis, but the policies do get changed based on the federal regulations. And these policies versions change as well. So it's not like one time you train the engine. The LLM is LLM, and then you have to train the engine with your own custom documentation, custom packages, and also the questions and the answerable questions and the boundaries that you need to set up. All that's been set up, and then subsequently answer the right questions and get the right answers back to them as well. And then the integrations that need to be built in with the applications that actually provide them to this AI engine. You have the APIs built in, with the clusters that are built on top of it. These APIs need to be called from the applications, and the application integration components are going to be built as well. The planned go live is about March, and we are currently doing the auditing and quality assurance. I wouldn't use the term testing. As Mike said, this is not a point solution, or this is not a technology implementation of just giving them the GPT. It is more like making sure we are doing the answers are actually validated by the knowledge workers. And they're making sure the quality has been measured, and then it's appropriately weighted so that the machine learning can actually be appropriated and adjusted accordingly. So we are doing currently the quality assurance of those questions and answers, and subsequently we'll be building out the production system and enable the operational processes using the same models that we have built as a standards as well. Some of the tools that you see here, we tried out with Falcons and Arca. Currently, our used approach is LLM is actually Llama 2. And we are using Hugging Face framework to support all of the training and integrations. And we're using Lambda and API Gateway to build the API integrations with it. And the custom applications can call from either browser-based or chatbot-based integrations. All is under AWS. In addition, these LLMs are maturing, and there's a lot of innovation going in the market. So any options that we can try out with the new, like Bedrock that this morning Adam was talking about, we can definitely try out within our own boundary and make sure these are purpose-built and helping our business users appropriately to gain the benefits of AI. This is our initial use case. Some of the subsequent use cases, I would go to the later rightmost use case, which is my personal favorite, being technology lead for the Tennessee and TennCare. I get about 13,000 emails in my Tennessee email every day saying that this server is actually hitting 60%. This capacity of the storage is going almost 90% during the batch execution. The database performance is going down. I'm sure my system administrators and engineering team is getting the same alerts every day as well. And it's a lot of email fatigue from the system alerts and monitoring side. So if I can just leverage AI to actually identify any potential system outages that can cause by the different system scenarios, I would love to use it. I think that's one of the initial use cases that we're trying to build for the technology purposes to make sure the right alerts are addressed earlier so that we are proactively addressing the issues than actually waiting the systems to fail. Other one is contact center agents assistant. We have two contact centers in TennCare. One is the citizen-facing contact center, which we built upon NICE in Contact, and there is a help desk that is operational for all the internal employees and TennCare contractors using AWS Connect. We can leverage AI to help translate, just a plain old Gen AI to translate the language to English and store those, and do a contextual summary of those conversations and provide the quality assurance for the contact center supervisors. Additional use cases are still being considered and see which ones actually gives us a better value, and then we'll actually build those use cases here. The middle one is another nurse's aid. It's very similar to Policy GPT. Policy GPT is on a static text, whereas nurse's aid is more of a rendered past cases where the nurse is handled. If there is any relevance to a past case where they handled, they can actually gain the intel of that particular case and provide the similar knowledge answers back to them. It's a summarization, orchestration of a previous case reference that can be leveraged by the AI engine as well. With that said, any questions?